Welcome to the Teaching Autism and Special Education Community Podcast. Hi, I'm Nikki, a passionate special educator, autism advocate, resource creator with over a decade of experience, and you may know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. This podcast is your go-to place for practical tips, hands-on strategies, and inspiring and funny stories to support special educators all around the world, whether it's building independence, creating engaging lessons, or finding that elusive work-life balance. I'm here to help you thrive inside and outside of the classroom. Let's dive into today's episode and make a difference together. Hi, and welcome back to the Teaching Autism and Special Education podcast. I'm your host, Nikki, and you may also know me as the face behind Teaching Autism. Today in this podcast episode, we're diving into what actually happens in the body and brain when a student escalates. Because if we only look at behaviour, we kind of miss this whole iceberg going on under the surface. And when we understand that iceberg, we are hopefully going to stop taking anything personally. And you're also going to start responding from a place of strategy instead of just reacting. So I like to keep these short and sweet. I know you're busy, so let's dive straight in. First of all, the most important thing to remember is that escalation is a stress response. So when a student escalates, their nervous system has detected a threat. Now, that threat might not look obvious to us. Threats are subjective. Everyone is going to have a different threat, depending on, their life experiences, who they are, things that they've been through. So it might not look obvious to us, but some of the threats that our students might see are a demand that feels too hard, a moment of sensory overload, public correction, unexpected changes, maybe others laughing around them, and even feeling misunderstood. Now, the thing is, our brain doesn't ask, is this socially appropriate for me to react to? Instead, your brain asks, am I safe? And if the answer is even slightly no, then the stress response activates. Now, when the brain detects a threat, the amygdala activates, and that triggers the release of those stress hormones. So what your student's going to have is their heart rate's going to increase, their muscles are going to feel tense, maybe their breathing changes, and all that logical thinking is going to decrease. And this is where we're going to start to see the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response. So some examples of each. For fight, you might see shouting, arguing, hitting. For flight, running, hiding, avoiding. Freeze can be staring and shutting down. And a fawn can be apologising and people-pleasing. And when our students are in this state, the prefrontal cortex, which handles the reasoning and the impulse control, is less accessible. So when we're trying to reason or lecture or debate during that escalation, it doesn't quite land home. Not because they're ignoring you, but because their thinking brain is offline right now. So it's really important to remember that escalation is often cumulative. It very rarely starts at zero. It builds, and it's basically a bunch of micro stressors stacking up. So think of noise, transitions, instructions, social demands, sensory discomfort, fatigue, hunger, confusion. Each one of those adds a little bit of a stress, like shaking that fizzy can of soda. And then something small becomes the tipping point. And from the outside, it looks like a complete overreaction. But from the inside, it's just the final straw. And this is when it can feel a little bit personal. Because when escalation happens after we have set a boundary or given an instruction, it can start to feel like they're challenging you, they're being defiant, they're trying to win this battle. But the secret is escalation is actually very rarely about winning. It is about losing that internal control. The child in this moment, they're not thinking about authority. They are just trying to survive this moment. Now, that doesn't mean I want you to remove your boundaries. I just want you to understand timing, because what escalation needs in that moment when that nervous system is activated is safety, calm, reduced stimulation, and predictability. It does not need long explanations, sarcasm, public correction, rapid questioning, increased volume. And if we match their intensity, what we actually do is we increase that threat to them. So if we lower ours, we're actually going to create a chance for some regulation. Now, I want you to think of escalation like a curve. At the bottom, we have regulated, and then we move into agitation, and then into escalation, then into peak, and then recovery. So the best time to intervene is early. So when you notice things like maybe they're starting to fidget more, they're getting louder, their body's getting rigid, they're starting to refuse things, their breathing changes, that is the moment that I want you to lower demands, offer a break, start reducing your language, and I want you to try and change that environment if you can. Because once we wait until the peak, that is going to make everything a whole lot harder. And then when a student comes down from escalation, they may start to have some big feelings. They may feel really embarrassed and ashamed, exhausted, and even confused. Now is not the time to ask, why did you do that? It is the time to say, you're safe, that was big, and we're going to figure this out. Teaching happens when the nervous system is regulated again. Now, if escalation is frequent, I want you to try and sit back and look at patterns, triggers, transition clarity, maybe sensory input, executive function load, their sleep. Sleep is a really important one, and their emotional safety in the classroom. That escalation is information. It's basically telling us that their capacity was just completely exceeded. Our job isn't to crush that escalation. Our job is to increase capacity and try and reduce those threats for our students. So I always like to end these by sort of making sure and checking in that you guys are okay as well. And I don't do these podcast episodes to ever call anyone out or shame anyone or anything like that. I think it's very important that we just learn from each other, and there's something new that we can learn every single day. We don't learn things until we've done things wrong or we've seen things go wrong, and everyone learns from it together. So if you have ever felt overwhelmed during a student escalating, then that's okay. You're human. It's intense. I don't think anyone ever really prepares us for what our classrooms and students can look like when we go into this. And, your nervous system is going to be reacting in that moment as well. So the more that you understand that escalation is biology and it's not a personal attack, you are going to feel much better. And I think the better you feel, the more steady you're going to feel, and steady adults are the ones that make the best changes. So you don't have to be perfect, you just have to be consistent. So wrapping this up, what's the nervous system behind escalation? It's perceived threat, stress hormones, reduced reasoning, and survival mode. So next time a situation starts to escalate, instead of thinking about how to stop this, I just want you to sit back for a moment and think, what did their nervous system just detect? And then that is going to help give you the proper way to respond to them and to help them regulate. And then once they're regulated, that's when we can make the big changes. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in and listening. I hope you found this podcast episode helpful. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you again next week.